Good morning. Taking a look at Bitcoin here. We crossed that 100K mark, and we can see overnight, sitting in this spot right here, we got pretty bullish and shot up during actually Tokyo trading hours. This happened around 9:30 p.m. Crossed that line and drove all the way up to this 104 and change, is kind of hitting the new all-time high. We've transitioned to be a little bit more stable since then, but as we can see from our lines, we are maintaining a green, purple, blue, red, which in other words means we are in a bullish trend. Obvious, because we're hitting some new all-time highs. So this is our 15-minute chart. If we switch over to the daily, we can start to see we're just shooting up there. We're definitely on the high end. We're overextended. This green, purple, blue, red remains intact. We completely flipped over here back on October 24th in advance of the election, and we could see election results drove us up a pretty good gap there, or not a gap, but just pretty bullish trend. So our short terms, those greens and purple lines, remain intact for short term bull, and then we have our blues and our reds are more longer term sentiments and feelings. So that tells us that this trend is likely to continue, at least in the short term. Long term, we still have a potential or possibility, and I would say even probability, to be dropping back down to these blue and red lines at some point in time. Obviously, between now and when that happens, the place of these lines will change. We can see the blue coming up. The red is also coming up, just not as steep. Those are just longer term time frames. So right now, when we see 100K, Bitcoin tends to be one of those assets that there are a lot of feelings around, specifically whole numbers. So 90,000, 95,000, 100,000, those become key support and or resistance lines. When we're above it, it's support. When we're below it, it's resistance. That's where we can find a lot of buyers and sellers just sitting, again, based upon those nice round numbers. Think general human, $1, $10, $100, $1,000. That's more meaningful than 90 cents, $9, $90, etc. So that's kind of what we're sitting at right now. My expectations, and of course this is my expectations, there is zero validity to there. This is not financial advice on any level, but when I'm looking at this, we always want to think if this, then that, if that, then this type scenarios. So it's more of a what I'll do if something happens type situation. So we know historically Q4 into early Q1, so January-ish, usually riding a wave, there maintains a high level of interest and push. A lot of times it can become because of the media. Media is out there putting things, and a lot of people have the feelings of FOMO that pop up of, oh, this thing is running, I should get in, which will continually push it up. That said, think about institutional buyers and how much they can buy, people with lots of money and how much they can buy, versus that person who has FOMO that might put in $1,000 or $2,000 in what they're buying. How much that actually really moves it probably creates a little more of a support line than it does necessarily push that line up. We have seen historically this time of year where the price trend can continue based upon the current numbers. 110, 120 is potentially realistic. I think it is something that we can continue to drive to, and it is something that would not surprise me before we hit a consolidation period. Consolidation will effectively be all of these lines coming back together, right? So, or even these bars and candles dropping back down below the blue and or the red for a period of time while it consolidates back to a real adjusted perceived price. Obviously, elections, new president coming in, some of those policies and being potentially more pro crypto in general, larger institutions adopting Bitcoin, that's going to provide strength in terms of an upward trend. So those are all things that could keep it up over the course of the next, say, 4 to 6 months. That said, if it starts to pop down below this purple, we can see purple line is creating some good support, came down and it was almost touching in these spots, but it pushed back up. So that shorter term sentiment is pretty strong right now. A lot of people buying that and keeping it there. So if it were to come below this, that might be my trigger to start placing some stop losses. As we think through this, you're trying to buy at the high or sell at the high, buy at the low. I get it. Everybody says it, but it's just generally speaking, not realistic without a lot of luck. And we want to play more in fact and thought than in luck and feelings and fear of missing out, so to speak. So for me, that would start to become a trigger. I would probably place it somewhere down below it, depending upon when that day hits, what that looks like. And then I would also go back in and let's say that sell is incorrect. I would place a buy above it. So let's just use, hey, it's almost at 94,000, maybe 90,000 is my trigger to sell. And if it pops back up to, say 95, 96, that might be my trigger to rebuy in. Sure, I'm eating $4,000 or $5,000 of a loss, respectively for a whole coin. But I'm still in the profits and I'm not going to miss a significant surge up. That said, it is historical nature of Bitcoin to consolidate. I mean, honestly, upwards of 70 to 80% after a brand new all-time high. The last three, we've had an average of 70 to 85%. So when we look at that, we're at this 104 all-time high. It is very feasible that it could go down to 30 to 40. Realistic? I wouldn't say it's very realistic, but it is very possible. So we just need to be careful there. I would think about some type of dollar cost averaging if we continue a trend down. Through there, maybe a little on the reserved side of things, but continue to buy as you go. And eventually we would end up landing in a spot where we're probably just sitting along that red line. When we look historically speaking, we don't hang out too far below red for too long. We're above it. We got below it here. We came back up. May of 21 to August of 21. So we only had about 3-4 months in there. I would say we came up, we bounced off April 22. We came back in January of 22. So less than a year for that to happen. So we can come down below, hang there, but we're not hanging there for years. I highlight that more so because we would probably want to be able to all right, I'm below red. That's a good time to really buy some more. So my next true buying and hodling target is going to be when all of these candlesticks are below the red, but I am going to play the market, reserve and keep what I have, and just keep an eye on it as we go. So as we go down this road over the next 6 months, I think a realistic high could be somewhere in the 115, 120, 125 range. I think in the next 6 months, a realistic low could be somewhere in that 80, 85 range. I think over the next 12 to 18 months, we could be seeing numbers back down into the 60, potentially lower range as well. So I think right now, because we are so far above that red, historically far above the red, came back to meet it. Far above the red, came back, far above the red, came back. We see just the pattern at some point in time, it is going to come back. So it just depends on where do you get out without giving up too much, making sure you didn't get out too early. But at the end of the day, if you exit somewhere in this range here, I think your very realistic world is over the course of the next year or two. You're going to be able to buy again at a lower price and then re-ride it up over sometime in the next 4 to 6 years. So my thoughts on Bitcoin, again, by no means am I an expert. By no means is this any type of advice. These are my opinions. This is how I'm going to play it. And hopefully that helps somebody just make a better decision.